This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to dedicate this learning to our dear friend Leon Etten, who was a regular at our Lunch and Learn. And sadly, he passed away this past week and was getting weaker. And so he is missed. And like I said, our learning is dedicated in his zechut, in his merit. Okay, so the topic that I like to go through today is Jews and non-Jews. How do Jews view non-Jews? And I like to express my appreciation to Rabbi Gil Student, who has a excellent website and posted a lot of sources that I am mostly drawing from his sources. So I like to give credit where credit is due. And thank you to Gil Student. One of the points that I always like to make, first of all, when people are coming to me to convert, I make it clear to them that from Judaism's point of view, one does not need to be Jewish in order to connect to God. One does not need to be Jewish in order to have an afterlife. Unlike some other religions where it's a join us or you are forever eternal damnation, whatever it might be, which actually makes no sense whatsoever, that God would expect all of humanity to follow this one path. And someone who was not born into that and does not understand that, was not groomed with that, has no chance of salvation, no chance of being saved, right? It really makes no sense. God is the God of the entire universe. God is the God of every single human being. That doesn't mean that there aren't responsibilities that every human being has. But at the same time, it's not going to be limited that everyone has to do exactly this, or there is no afterlife, they're going to hell, God rejects them, no connection to God. So to me, that is one of the very glaring differences and indications of the truth, the veracity of Judaism, that it views God as the God of all humanity, and the Jewish people have a unique, specific role to play. But that does not exclude God's being the God of all humanity, which only makes sense. If we're talking about God, then there's God. There is one God. There's not a Christian God or a Muslim God or a Jewish God. There is just God. And it only makes sense that he is accepting and loving to all of his children. So Judaism does not denigrate Gentiles. We don't see them as eternal damnation. We see them, as I actually spoke about in Shul a couple of weeks ago, as fellow members of the faith community. Those who are of faith, and we'll discuss actually three different categories of, of non-Jews. But those who are fellow members of the faith community are respected and accepted as fellow members of the faith community. Jews have certain obligations. Non-Jews do not have those obligations. And again, when someone comes to convert, I try to impress upon them that if you don't like to do push-ups, you don't want to join the Marines. So if you're not looking to fulfill the commandments, then it doesn't make sense to convert. Why in the world would a person take upon themselves this obligation, this responsibility, voluntarily take upon themselves certain obligations which they're not planning to implement, to fulfill? Right? No one has to become a Marine. If you decide that you want to volunteer for the Marines, you better like doing push-ups. Otherwise, you can't volunteer and then say, but by the way, I don't do push-ups. That just doesn't work. So Jews have certain obligations. Non-Jews don't have those obligations. But they have certain obligations. So let's take a look at our very first sources, our more general sources. Maimonides, Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Tshuva, the laws of Tshuva, based on the Tosefta, based on the Gemara Sanhedrin. Chasidei umot ha'olam yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. Righteous umot ha'olam, nations of the world, righteous Gentiles, yesh lahem chelek l'olam haba. They have a portion in the world to come. Furthermore, number two, there's the Babylonian Talmud and there's the Jerusalem Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud would not deal with Peah. Peah literally means the corner. And that's one of the agricultural laws, that when a person is harvesting their field, they must leave the corner unharvested, and the poor can then come and harvest and partake of that. These agricultural laws only apply in the land of Israel, and therefore it is the Jerusalem Talmud that goes in depth about these laws. The Babylonian Talmud, where again in Babylon, ancient Babylon, present day parts of Iran and Iraq, so where these agricultural laws do not apply, therefore we don't have a Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud does not go in detail about this. But the Jerusalem Talmud there in the Tractate of Peah says, Ketiv, Umishpat v'rav tzedakah lo ya'aneh, lo yi'uneh, probably. The pasuk in Eov, Job says, with justice and with Rav tzedakah, with an abundance of kindness, lo yi'uneh, he does not deal harshly. The Gemara explains, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu misahesh scharan shel osei mitzvot begoy. God does not withhold reward from Gentiles who perform his commandments. Now, the commandments over here that we're talking about, we're not talking about a Gentile who observes Shabbos, a Gentile who observes the laws of Kashrut, because that is not relevant to them. But rather we're talking about a Gentile who observes the laws relevant to Gentiles, which broadly are known as the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. And we've had some lunch and learns on that topic. The 7 Noahide Mitzvot, and those were commanded to Noach. Actually, most of them were commanded to Adam. Only some of them were added on and commanded to Noach. For example, Ever min achai, cruelty to animals, not eating the limb of a live animal. Well, Adam and Eve were vegetarian. They were not eating animals at all, according to most opinions. Therefore, that only came in play during the time of Noach, and therefore they are referred to categorically as the Sheva Mitzvot, the 7 commandments of B'nai Noach. So let's look at basically the 3 main categories that we have of Gentiles. The one that you're probably most familiar with is Ben Noach, and we have that on the sources. Let's go through it together. There are 3 main categories of Gentiles. Ben Noach. The first category is the Gentile who fulfills his obligations as an ethical monotheist. Okay, and that's really the key words over here. We're going to see different applications of that, or different degrees of that, or none that. But that is the basic working premise that we're going on. An ethical monotheist. This person is generally called a Ben Noach or Noahide, meaning a proud descendant of the biblical Noah. In the Jewish tradition, Noah and his sons were commanded to fulfill 7 commandments, which amount to ethical monotheism. These 7 commandments are the cardinal 3 sins: not to murder, not to worship idolatry, not to commit acts of immorality, incest, adultery. And in addition to those three, the way I remember it, it's Aleph, Bet, Bet, Gimel. Aleph is Ever Min Achai, cruelty to animals, not to eat the limb of a live animal. Bet is not to curse God. Second bet is to set up a proper court, Beit Din, a proper court system, a just court system. And Gimel is not to steal. So these are the ethical 7 commandments which amount to ethical monotheism. Those Gentiles who observe these commandments are considered righteous Gentiles. They are, however, not Jews and are not considered part of Jewish society. They are righteous people and recognized for their accomplishments. They remain part of the human brotherhood, part of this what I mentioned before, our brotherhood of faith communities, but not part of Jewish society. That is Ben Noach, and there are many sites that are dedicated to educating those who want to live as a Ben Noach. That is how they would do so. And many of those who come to convert, many people have tried Ben Noach and want more. And therefore, they are coming for an actual conversion. Okay? However, Ben Noach are righteous Gentiles, certainly fitting into the category that we began with the Rambam, the Gemara Sanhedrin, and the Jerusalem Talmud, that the righteous amongst the nations of the world have a portion of the world to come. God does not withhold reward from Gentiles who perform his, meaning the commandments of God given to them. There's another category that we're not as familiar with, but this is one that's actually mentioned throughout the Talmud and is also alluded to throughout the Torah. And that is a Ben Noach plus, we might call it. Actually is called a Ger Toshav. Ger, now we normally associate the term Ger for a convert, but this is a Ger, a sojourner, Toshav who has settled amongst us. And as we'll read now read, there are those who go beyond this step and approach a Jewish court. And in exchange for entering Jewish society, they vow to observe their commandments. Again, not a ger who comes to a Jewish court and says, I want to become Jewish. Such a person goes through the process and is a 100% Jew. During the class that I gave this morning as part of this a dedication to Eric Sampson of blessed memory. So the Mishnah in Avos that I spoke about was the teachings of Shemaiah and of Talion. Shemaiah and Talion were converts. They were amongst the greatest teachers. They were the Rabbeim, the teachers of Hillel and Shammai, right? Say no more than that. They were the Rabbeim of Hillel and Shammai, and they were converts. So those who convert are open, full Jews, no holds barred, full members of the Jewish people, certainly in our shul, full members of the community. Many are those who are leaders of our community. But we're not talking about that over here. Here we're talking about something called a Ger Toshav. The Ger Toshav go beyond this step of the Ben Noach, approach a Jewish court, and in exchange for entering Jewish society, they vow to observe their commandments and be ethical monotheists. In other words, instead of being a Ben Noach living off in who knows where, doing their thing, which is perfectly fine and legitimate, because wherever they are, God is certainly there. But the Ger Toshav, wants to take their observance and pledge openly in a court, Jewish court, that is what they are doing, what they will be doing. So they're not just acting unilaterally, and they want to become part of Jewish society to a certain degree. They vow to observe their commandments and be ethical monotheists. Such a person is called a ger toshav. By pledging that he or she will fulfill their obligation to be an ethical monotheist, they enter Jewish society. They are not a convert. They do not become Jewish. In fact, he can worship any monotheistic religion he chooses. He is, however, a righteous Gentile and is gladly received into the Jewish community. So what does that mean? He is welcome to live in Jewish neighborhoods should he so choose, is supported by Jewish charities if he so needs, and is considered part of the fabric of Jewish society in many ways. For example, let's go to source number 3, which is the Talmud Psachim. The Gemara quotes a pasuk in Devarim, Deuteronomy 14:21, which says, "Lo tochlu kol nevela." A nevela is an animal that died on its own, or that died through not through a kosher shechita. So we, of course, are not allowed to partake of that. Lo tochlu kol nevela. You shall not eat of any unslaughtered animal. But then the Torah goes on to say, what can you do with it? Lager asher bisharecha, to the ger, again, not a convert. A convert, of course, can't eat non-slaughtered meat, but it means lager asher bisharecha, that is the ger, the sojourner who is in your gate. Titnena, you shall give it. The English here refers to it as a resident alien. That is the ger toshav. To him you shall give it, va'achala, and he can eat it. O machor lenochri, or you may sell it to a nochri, or you may sell it to a foreigner, to a non-Jew. So we see that we are giving a differentiation between the ger, the non-Jew who is living amongst you, what we call the ger toshav, and a regular nochri. To one, well, let's go further in the Gemara. I skipped a little bit. The Gemara asks, how does Rabbi Meir explain the formulation of the verse? Oh, it said, L'ger shem shvechet nanav achala, oh, or machor lenachri, or you could sell it to a nachri. Rabbi Meir says you could actually give it to either one you want, or sell it to either one you want. But the or tells me that we should lakdim netina de ger lemechira de goy. You should first give it to the ger toshav even before selling it to the complete goy, to the complete non-Jew. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, no, halot tzarich kra. I don't even need a pasuk for this. Why? You are obligated, the Jewish community is obligated to help support, if needed, the ger toshav. The goy, whereas a regular Gentile, you're not obligated to support him. Lo tzarich kra ela svarahu, right? There's no need for the pasuk for this. So we see this idea of giving, helping to support the ger toshav, someone who has joined our community, again, as a non-Jew, not someone who has converted, but someone who has come to our Beit Din, pledged to keep the Noahide laws, to live as an ethical monotheist. He or she then become part of the fabric of our Jewish society as non-Jews who are living in our midst, and tzedakah, charity, whatever they might need, they are full community members, and we should be there to support them and to help them. Let us continue here. Another source, which is the Medrash Rabbi. Now, first the Rambam. There we go. It is prohibited for a Jew to give an akum. An akum, here it's translated as a Gentile, but actually akum is an abbreviation of oved kochavim, someone who is an idolater. One is not allowed to give him a gift. Aval noten hu leger toshav, but to give to the ger toshav, again translates as a resident alien, but the ger toshav is the non-Jew who has pledged in the Beit Din to follow the Noahide laws as an ethical monotheist. One should give him. Shenamar, as it says, the pasuk we quoted above, La ger shebisharecha titnana va'achla. To the ger who is in your gates, you shall give him this unslaughtered meat, and he will eat it. Oh, sell it lenachri. B'mechira v'lo b'matana. So to the idolater, you can sell it, you can do business, but don't give gifts. Aval leger toshav, but to a ger toshav, bein b'mechira, bein b'netina, one is able to sell it or to give it, because atam mitzuveh lahachayoto, because you have an obligation to keep him alive. As it says, v'ger v'toshav, v'chai imach, he shall live with you. So again, both the Ben Noach and Ger Toshav are righteous Gentiles. The Ben Noach has not entered Jewish society, perhaps does not wish to, and there's no obligation for him to do so. A Ben Noach, wherever they live, they're in God's company. Anywhere in this world, in this universe, is in God's company. And if they keep to the Noahide laws as an ethical monotheist, beautiful. They are a Ben Noach. They have their chelet, their portion in the world to come. But, therefore, he is treated like a stranger. He's not part of our community. He is respected as a righteous human being, one who's fulfilling his divine purpose in the world, but he is not part of the Jewish community. It is of these two categories, both the Ben Noach and the Ger Toshav, both of whom are living their lives as ethical monotheists, that the Talmudic literature states, the Medrash Rabbah, Hashem ohev tzadikim. Pasuk in Tehillim, Hashem loves the tzadikim, loves the righteous. Kach amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what Hashem says, Ani ohev, Ani ohavai ahev. Those who love me, I love. As it says, Ki mechabdai achabed. Hey moavim oti, those who honor me, I will honor. Those who love me, I love them. V'lama kadosh baruch hu ohev tzadikim, she'ena nachala, ena mishpacha. Why does Hashem love the righteous? She'ena nachala. Righteousness is not a nachala. It's not an inheritance. Eina mishpacha, it's not a family trait. Atamotze kohanim beit av heim, haleviyim beit av heim. If you want to be a kohen, you have to come from a beit av, from a family of priests of kohanim. If you want to be a Levi, you have to come from a beit av, from a house, a family of Leviim. Shneimar Beit Aharon, the house of Aaron. We say this in our Hallel. Baruch Hu et Hashem should bless God. Beit HaLevi, the house of Levi. Baruch Hu et Hashem should bless God. There you've got to be part of that house. Either you're part of the house or you're not part of the house. You want to become a Kohen? Besides the famous joke that we all know, you want to become a Kohen? You can't become a Kohen. You want to become a Levi? You can't become a Levi. Lama? Shlo yaviv lo kohen lo Levi. If your father wasn't a Kohen, your father wasn't a Levi, you can't be. If he was, you are, right? That's the famous joke. Rabbi, I want to be a Kohen. You can't be a Kohen. Comes back next week, Rabbi, I want to be a Kohen. Can't be a Kohen. Comes back the next week, the Rabbi says, why do you want to be a Kohen? And he says, my father was a Kohen. My grandfather was a Kohen. I want to be a Kohen, right? That's the famous joke, right? So if a person's father was a Kohen, he's a Kohen. His father was a Levi, he's a Levi. Otherwise, it doesn't work that. Aval, and here's the crux. Aval in the kavakesh adam liot tzaddik. The person wants to be a righteous person. Afilu goy, even the person is non-Jewish. Yocholhu, he can be a tzaddik, she can be a tzaddeket. She'ena lo beit av, because that is not dependent on the family lineage. Lekachu omer, therefore it says afterwards there in Hallel, we said, Beit Haron, the house of Aaron, bless Hashem. The house of Levi, bless Hashem. Yirei Hashem, those who fear God, bless Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Beit Yirei Hashem lo nemar. Doesn't say the house of those who fear God, that you come from a God-fearing family. Doesn't say that. Ela Yirei Hashem. It says those who fear God. Eino Beit Av. It's not dependent on one's lineage, on one's family. Ela me'atzmam nitnadvu. Those who on their own have brought themselves forward. Va'avo l'kadosh baruch hu. And they love Hashem. Therefore Hashem loves them. Okay? And again, this applies to those two categories that we mentioned. The category of the Ben Noach and the Ger Toshav. In a similar vein, the Medrash and Achrei Mot from Leviticus, from Vayikra, the pasuk says Asher Yasa Otam, that a person will do these commandments v'chai bahem, and a person will live by them. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omer, Ata Omer minayin afilu nachri, how do we know even a Gentile? V'oset HaTorah, who keeps his laws, Harei Kohen Gadol, that he is considered holy like a Kohen Gadol, the high priest who's keeping his laws and restrictions. Tamilom asher yaseh tam ha'adam. It says that a person will do them. Ha'adam v'chai bahem, a person who will live by them. Similarly, it says, V'zot Torah t'kohanim alevim Yisroel lo nemar kan ela zot Torah ta'adam Hashem Elukim. Doesn't say this is the Torah. Let's go, this is now in Shmuel, right? It doesn't say that which is proper for a Kohen or a Levite or an Israelite, but it says that which is fitting for an Adam, right? For a person to do. Jewish or non-Jewish, keep those mitzvot relevant to you, 7 mitzvot relevant to non-Jews, Taryag 613 mitzvot to the general klal of Israel. That's what it says. V'chein omer pitchu sharim v'yavo. It says open the gates so that v'yavo, right? He would also say from Isaiah, open the gates so the priests, Levites, and Israelites may enter, is not what it says. It doesn't say open the gates for the Kohen of the Yisraelim. Ela v'yavo goy tzaddik. But it says, let a righteous nation, shomer emunim, the one who is keeper of their faith, that is, ethical monotheists. V'chein omer zeh ashar la'Hashem, right? It says, this is the gate to Hashem. We all know the pasuk. Tzadikim yavovo. May the righteous enter. It doesn't say this is the gate to God. Let the Kohen, Levites, or Israelites enter. Rather, it says tzadikim, so that the righteous can enter. Similarly, it doesn't say run anew, sing forth, Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. Lo nemar, it doesn't say sing forth, Kohanim, Levites, Israelites. Ella, what does it say? Run anew, tzadikim. Let the righteous sing forth. V'chein omer hativa Hashem. Doesn't say God gives out good to the Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. Rather, Hativ Hashem litovim. Rather, it says Hashem gives out good to those who are good, to the good people. What do we clearly see from this? Afilu nachri, even a non-Jew, va'ose et ha-Torah, who keeps his Torah, keeps the Torah that is relevant to him, the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, harehu kekohen gadol. Such a person is like a Kohen Gadol. Such a person is at the very, very top. That's two categories. There's the Ben Noach, keeping the 7 mitzvot. There's the Ben Noach plus, meaning the turbocharged Ben Noach, who's not just off doing it on their own, but they pledged to do that in front of the Beit Din, and they are there as part of the fabric of the Jewish community. And then you have those who are not ethical monotheists. Such a person is going against the covenant that God made with Noah, and therefore there is accountability. To such people, Judaism has and we'll call it an ambivalent attitude. On one hand, they're going against God's purpose of the world, and therefore we try to keep a distance from them. We don't want to be influenced by their ways of thinking, ways of acting. On the other hand, they are created, as we'll soon see from Avot, every human being is created in the Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And therefore they must be respected and treated respectfully. Their positive traits we respect, we recognize, but their negative traits are reason enough for us not to embrace them and to keep a safe distance in terms of influence, to keep a safe distance from them. There's an interesting Talmud Smachot, which says as follows. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hoi Tov. This was a hesped, a eulogy given for a Gentile. Hoi Tov. The good person. Hoi Ne'eman. The faithful one. Ochel me'amalo. Who ate the fruit of his own labor. That was the eulogy Rabbi Yehuda gave. Amru lo, the Chacham said to him, he came mahi nachta lekasherim. Right? That's a beautiful eulogy. What have you left over for the kasherin, for others who are more worthy? Amar lahem, he said to them, Im haya kasher ne'ma'in koren alav. If he was worthy, if he was kosher, why should he not be eulogized in such a way? And again, Professor Saul Lieberman, from his book Greek and Jewish Palestine, writes, the virtues enumerated in this eulogy are purely secular. He was good. He was faithful. He ate the fruit of his own labor. Purely secular. There is no trace of religion in them. The man was good, faithful. He ate the fruits of his own labor. The Gentile spoken of is a heathen. He is neither a semi-proselyte, not a Ben Noach, not a Ger Toshav, nor a Christian. No mention is made of his fear of God. The rabbis understood the heathen society and credited it with the virtues it was not devoid of. Meaning, when there are positive aspects, we should respect that. Furthermore, source number 8, the Mishnah in Avot, Hu haya omer, he would say, Ben Azai would say, Al tehei baz l'chol adam, v'al tehei maflig l'chol davar. Do not denigrate, do not regard anyone with contempt, do not baz, do not denigrate any person, and do not completely reject any idea, anything. She'ein lecha adam she'ein lo sha'ah ve'ein lecha davar she'ein lo makom. There is no man who does not have his hour. and there is nothing that does not have its place. Everyone has some virtues. Everyone has some positive aspects that we can look at and we can learn from. We're taught that we should always learn from every human being, right? A chacham is a lomed mikol adam. A chacham is a person who learns from everyone. I think it was Rav Yochanan who would stand up whenever an elderly person would walk by. He would stand up, Jewish or non-Jewish. And he said, how many experiences has this person endured? How many experiences has this person gone through? And therefore, there is much that can be learned from this person. There is much to respect when it comes to this person. The Mishnah in Avot says very clearly, Hu haya omer, Rabbi Akiva would say, Chaviv Adam, how dear is mankind. Now, another part of the Mishnah speaks about Yisroel, Israelites, Jews. So this part is not specific to Jews. This is mankind, humankind, all whatever, how many billion, 8 billion of the world. Chaviv Adam, how beloved is mankind. Shenivra b'tselem, who was created in this divine image. Chiba yetera, and an extra amount of love is no da'at lo, was in letting us know, making sure we know, Shenivra, that we and every other human being that we encounter was created b'tselem, in the image of God. Shenemar, as God told us, b'tselem Elokim asai ta'adam, in the image of God, he has made mankind. Of course, God has no physical image, but it means that we have this reflection of godliness in us. So now there's certain things that when it comes to lending with interest or borrowing with interest, I'm not allowed to lend to or borrow from a Jew with interest. I am allowed from a non-Jew. Now, there's nothing that's not showing any animosity that we have towards non-Jews or looking down on non-Jews. There's certain things that are reserved for family. I would not lend my brother with interest, whether or not there was such a halacha, because it's family. So we have many laws that are there to build a sense of family amongst the Jewish people. That does not mean that we look down on anyone else. There's nothing immoral about lending with interest. Banks do it all the time. I think most of us have mortgages. We don't consider that to be immoral. We consider that we're thankful that we're able to take out a mortgage and thereby be able to buy a house. But there are certain things that are reserved for family. So again, we have our three categories. We have the category of the ger, of the Ben Noach, who is an ethical monotheist, has his portion in the world to come, living his life or her life beautifully, exactly as a non-Jew was meant to be living their life. Beautiful. They have chosen not to become part of the Jewish community. No reason for them to become part of the Jewish community. They're not Jewish. They are living part of the faith community, living their lives in a beautiful, uplifted manner in the eyes of man and in the eyes of God. There are those who turbocharge, we'll call it, their Ben Noach or Bat Noach status, and they pledge allegiance to these laws in front of a Jewish Beit Din, and by doing so, they become part of the Jewish community, and we have our obligation, if they are in need, to help support them. They are part of the Jewish society, albeit non-Jews. And then there are those that are neither of those categories, who are not living as ethical monotheists. Such a person, we don't want to draw too close because of the potential influence, negative influence. At the same time, they are human beings created in the Tselem Elokim. We treat them with respect, and positive qualities that they do have, we can point out and appreciate and seek to emulate. That is how Judaism views non-Jews. They are all, everyone is created in the image of God, and we each have our responsibilities. Our responsibilities don't make us any better or worse. These are our responsibilities. And I always like to say, let's worry about doing what we're supposed to do before we're worrying about what everyone else is supposed to be doing. But inherent in the very fabric of Judaism is B'Tselem Elokim bara et ha'adam. In the image of God, mankind, humankind, or whatever it is, 7.8, 8.2, I don't know what it is, billion human beings are all created B'Tselem Elokim, and we show respect to God when we show respect to others. When we recognize they are B'Tselem Elokim, that's how we show respect to God. I'll conclude with a famous story from the Talmud that Hillel, the great sage Hillel, was going in a very resolute manner to go take care of something. And his students saw that. They said, Rebbe, where are you going? He said, I'm going to do a great mitzvah. So they were very excited. They wanted to follow their Rebbe so they could learn from him and see what is this great mitzvah to which he is going with such alacrity and such energy. And on the way there, he stops off at a bathhouse. He goes into the bathhouse. And he comes out of the bathhouse, and the students are ready to continue the journey to the great mitzvah. Clearly, there was a need for a pit stop along the way at the bathhouse, but now we're back to business. But to their surprise, Hillel was turning around and going back home. And they said, Rebbe, I thought you were going to do a great mitzvah. He said, I was. And they said, well, what was that great mitzvah that you went to do? You went to the bathhouse. And he explained, if there is a statue of the king, and the statue of the king gets soiled, and someone goes and rubs and cleans that statue of the king, is that not giving honor to the king? So we are created B'Tselem Elokim. And therefore, when I went into that bathhouse to shine up, so to speak, this Tselem Elokim, this image of God, is that not giving honor to God? That was the great mitzvah I was going to do. And we have this ability to fulfill this great mitzvah every time we take a shower, every time we make sure that we present ourselves properly, and perhaps even more importantly, every time that we treat every other human being with respect, then we have this tremendous mitzvah of showing respect to the king. Someone does not need to be family in order for me to respect him. And the fact that I treat family differently than others does not take away from the respect that I have for others. Okay, any questions, any points anybody would like to make? Feel free to speak up. That's what I've got. Once again, a thank you to Rabbi Giel's student for putting together the Mara Makamot, the different sources that I have utilized and shared with you. And once again, this is Le'iloi Nishmas Leon Etin, Zechrono Livracha, who passed away this week. Unfortunately, I was looking to do the funeral, but being that I'm in quarantine, I was unable to do so. But this is my contribution towards the elevation of his neshama. Okay, my friends?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes, Cheryl.
So about the person who is part of the community but isn't going to convert. Is that relevant to our days, our time
Okay,
right now?
okay. So nowadays we don't really have that. We don't really have that split of different between the Ben Noach and the Ger Toshav, right? In a loose sense, we do, meaning a Ger. We have. Perhaps I could say as follows: we have our Ben Noachs who might be anywhere in the world doing what they're doing. And then we have other ethical monotheists who reach out in friendship to the Jewish community, right? Who stand in solidarity with the Jewish community when we are going through a difficult time. Those who invite us to speak at different interfaith um, presentations.
Mhm.
So I would say that those are the ones who really go into what we would loosely categorize as the Ger Toshavs of today. Those who are part of the faith community, the monotheistic faith community, who reach out in friendship and camaraderie to and solidarity to us.
But it doesn't mean that they've gone to like a Jewish court to
Correct.
declare.
To
Okay.
pledge their allegiance to the Sheva Mitzvot, to the seven mitzvot. That is correct. But I would say that loosely, that is who would probably be more of the Ger Toshavs of today, who have somewhat become part of the Jewish community.
Mhm.
So we have there are some who are non-Jews who will attend classes, who will attend services, that
Mhm.
they feel themselves with a deep friendship, camaraderie, and an openness to learn from the Jewish community. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Yes, Michael. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you. I don't know if others were able. Thumbs up? No.
Michael, turn your volume up.
Hmm. Um, I'm not sure what to do for you, Michael. If you want to type it into the chat, in the upper right-hand corner, there's like a little blurb next to the number of people that are there, the 15. To the right of that, there's a little chat button. You can type it in over there, and that might be able to work. And we'll be able to see your question or your point and be able to respond to that.
I have another question, but that was
Yes.
about per fair vote. Is that going to be ongoing Thursday morning
No,
class?
that was a one time again 18 rabbis around the world each day, but there are others who are giving classes every day. So you can certainly go on to the Eric Sampson Legacy site
Oh,
and you can see who's doing tomorrow, who's doing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was a beautiful tribute. I mean, the idea was a beautiful tribute to Eric. I hope I did a fair job at that tribute, and it's a wonderful thing. So I would encourage you to go on to the Eric Simpson Legacy site and see who's giving other days, and certainly join in.
Thank you. That was so
Okay,
touching.
Michael, I don't see anything on the chat. So that doesn't seem to have worked. But you can give me a call or an email and we can discuss it privately. Sorry for the technical challenges involved. Okay, everybody. If that's it, I will sign off. A good day, everybody, and a good Shabbos. I hope to be able to rejoin the world come Shabbos. That's the plan right now. Hopefully, I will be able to.
Good
Okay, a
Shabbos.
good day and a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you.